Well, 2024 made history when it comes to the environment, but not necessarily in a good way. It has been the hottest year ever on record and seems to just keep getting hotter. And extreme weather events took place across the Americas as well in 2024. And for more on the climate crisis and the financial toll it takes, particularly in 2024, let's turn to Daniel Kreeger. He's Executive Director and co-founder of the Association of Climate Change Officers. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Karina.
I want to just start off by asking you personally, how alarmed are you by the clear increase in extreme weather we're seeing globally?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's even working in this space now for over 15 years, it's hitting harder and faster than I even imagined.
Help remind viewers of just some of the disasters and extreme weather we witnessed this year. Are there particular areas that seem to be more impacted than others?
Yeah, there's definitely, you've got some parts of the world, low-lying, countries like Bangladesh. The flood risk that they have is off the charts, and the defense is available to them. The wildfires in the Amazon, in Canada, and these drier areas have been getting hit by drought harder than expected too. Have really created substantial challenges, and not just where those events are happening, but also in surrounding areas, whether it's air quality impacts moving from Canada across into various cities in the United States, or the food impacts of wildfire in the Amazon affecting one of the largest producers of food in the world.
Yeah. China as well has been affected with record heat and torrential flooding just in this last year. And it also makes up half of the world's renewable energy growth in 2024. How important is China in the development of green energy and the fight against climate change?
So China has two things that make it critical in this battle. Number one, it is the largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. It's really not very close. So it needs to reduce its emissions in order for us to globally solve this problem. But it's also one of the largest economies in the world, and its ability as a powerhouse to scale up quickly and provide clean energy solutions is also critically important, not just towards its reduction of its own emissions, but helping others do so as well.
Well, what is it doing differently compared to the U.S. when it comes to getting up to speed with things like solar and wind power?
Well, the sheer scale of the Chinese economy is just a different animal. You also don't have the same political and cultural barriers, because there's a concerted effort taking place there without much fight in that regard. But it's the scale, the ability of the Chinese economy when it puts its mind to something and a direction. It's really extraordinary what it can do.
Absolutely, and it has a lot of government resources behind it as well. What sort of financial toll does all of these weather events take on people affected and the economies trying to clean up and prevent future climate-induced catastrophes?
Well, you can't get back to where you were before with these levels of storms. This year was the second most billion-dollar disasters in the U.S. The numbers are off the charts worldwide. You don't get back to where you were, and if you're underinsured in those areas, you really can't reinvest back to that number. Your recovery is pennies on the dollar, metaphorically speaking. So you're not going to win by trying to recover. Now, what we did see is interesting is some meaningful stories on communities that are unprepared versus communities that were prepared. Your clip earlier referenced how fast and how strong Hurricane Milton was. But the west coast of Florida was really, really responsive and prepared, and the infrastructure has been invested in there, and I think actually did better than I was expecting. On the other side, we saw what Tropical Storm Helene did in the Carolinas, in communities whose infrastructure is not equipped for this and whose communities were not prepared, and it's a noteworthy difference.
Yeah, absolutely. What sort of financial support should governments be committed to help alleviate the dire toll, especially in underdeveloped countries and communities who seem to always just get hit the hardest?
Well, this is the story of climate change, is those who have the least capacity to defend themselves and recover from these are the ones who are getting hit the hardest. And that is the terrible sadness of this. We need to be investing now into resilience, into cleaning, into both. We need to be clean, adaptive, and resilient. We have to do this now because we can't do it as it gets worse. It's just impossible with the rising scale and magnitude of these disasters. So the best thing we can be doing is investing in smarter, adaptive, and resilient today.
All right, fascinating discussion. We will wait to see what happens. Thank you for your time. Daniel
Thanks for
Kreeger,
having me.
thank you so much.